Hello and welcome as we take you out to the world on a week-to-week basis. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock. This is Emerald Planet TV as we look around the globe in 144 different nations looking for those 1,000 best practices. And the best practices are going to take us through a century that we'll see an explosion of population, about 9 billion people by 2050 and maybe 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century. And so how are we going to take care of all these people? That's really one of the questions that we have. And you see this logo right over my shoulder here of SHINA Inc. It's a group that's very much involved in Tanzania and the African continent, but at the same time also in the United States. And Rose Woodruff is actually, she has a very long title, leadership and team coach, executive decision coaching, but most cogent as members of the board of directors for SHINA Inc. And Rose, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. You have a very successful business. We've talked before. We actually traveled twice now to African continent, going into Tanzania and looking at all the things going over there. But why do you think you need to have this give back as far as leadership skills specifically, but also you do a lot with communications and other things, and you're working with the women specifically, but also the youth there. Why is that so important to you?
You know, for me, SHINA is actually all about the give back. The leadership skills and communication is more what I do to earn my living. But what we do is empowering people. And when you empower people, it's always building their leadership skills. Whether you are, whether you're encouraging your other volunteers on the ground to teach women entrepreneurial skills, to empower them as a co-op group to open a bank account, which they may have never imagined they would do. There are so many things that our on-the-ground volunteers do that's building the leadership of the community. And so it's our job as the SHINA board and volunteers in the U.S. to support the on-the-ground volunteers.
That's fantastic. Well, tell us, what is SHINA Inc.? Because this is your own show. And then, and why do you volunteer with SHINA Inc. specifically? I mean, there's 7,300 nonprofits just registered in Washington, D.C. alone, and countless others across the national capital region. So why SHINA?
Okay, well, let me start with SHINA Inc. SHINA Inc. is a nonprofit based in the U.S. and in Tanzania, founded by Jessica Kamala Mushala and her husband Amos Mushala. And you know, and I've been involved with a lot of charity work over the years. The reason I stay with SHINA, SHINA directly impacts the people who are most vulnerable. When you look at students who wouldn't get to go to school because their parents can't afford the school fees or the uniforms. When you look at women who have been widowed and perhaps the male relatives have divorced them and the children, at that point they're not eligible for government subsidies because they have male relatives who should be taking care of them, but because of the divorces, they have nothing. And so SHINA can come in and make a huge difference in their lives, get their children through school. One of the things with SHINA is you, as a donor, and I'm a volunteer so I get it doubly, but even as just a donor, you can go over and meet these people whose lives have been truly touched and changed in a profound way by the work of SHINA.
Yeah, and this is just an incredible photograph. This is Jessica Mushala, who is the founder and president of the organization, and the amount of giving that they have out of their own pocket and the energy that they have, because they're actually just giving this. Now, my father was a minister, and his gifts and offerings was about 25% of everything he earned, which was not a small amount in his day. But the Mushala seems like they're just giving everything. It's just absolutely amazing individuals, and I think it's fantastic. But this reason I put this up here, and I want you to attest to this, Rose, if you will, these are what they call love gifts. you know, each place you go, you know, they are, of course, there. We went with the mosquito blankets and all that. But the communities do this, and they do it voluntarily. Tell us about that, and then what does this really mean as far as strengthening and expanding the influence, but the importance of SHINA in these communities themselves?
So you call them love gifts. I call them gratitude. And actually, the first time you go on a SHINA trip, it's so exciting because everywhere you go, people line up to bring gifts of gratitude to you. And in this particular photo, these are hand-woven purses and fans that have been painted by one of our Women in Business micro-grant co-ops. And in fact, they're getting their new factory built so that the fumes don't overtake them, which was happening before. You know, when you talk about Jessica, most people actually call her Mama SHINA. And so everywhere she goes, the people whose lives she's touched want to express their gratitude.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's just like this group here. This was a drumming and quasi-dance group, you know, was from a religious background. But it's just incredible. This was their gift for this day to this whole thing, which probably had 300 to 400 people, you know, involved in this from the community. And it was just absolutely incredible, the energy and the willingness. And they were out in the sun that was about 100 degrees for about 4 hours or 5 hours. That was just absolutely amazing. And so what energy are you seeing when you're going over, and how does this bootstrapping, hands up, it's not really a charity, even though we said that at the very beginning, it really is, it's really empowerment, I think would be a better term. How would you describe that, Rose?
So, okay, well, to back up a little bit, this group is through our health and spirituality programs. And SHINA sponsored several choirs, both Christian and Muslim. That was the Muslim choir. And in Tanzania, one does not separate singing and dancing. Singing and dancing is done out of joy. And so when we support those programs, and all of our programs are only supported for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years you graduate and you're on your own.
Well, the operative word of that too, Rose, is support. It's not like you're giving and all that. They really have to do more than just a match. They really have to be involved and provide funds and all that to do this work. You're just helping them along, is that correct?
Yeah, we're just helping them, and we're helping them with just what they need, not necessarily what they want, what they need, certainly not more than they need. You know, one group, it was an accordion 1 year. So again, it's putting the resources that are necessary, only the resources that are necessary, and doing it in a very efficient manner, which is one of the things that makes SHINA different from a lot of other charities.
Yeah, that's just amazing. But looking at that, as far as, do you think this is really the reason that SHINA is so successful and it keeps expanding? Because, you know, when I was there a year ago, I mean, we went to certain communities. This time we went over, literally over the whole country, and there's active groups going just everywhere. And when you go in, we met with district commissioners, regional commissioners. They all knew SHINA itself. They all knew what it was there for, why it was being involved in the community, and they were incredibly supportive as government agencies with a nonprofit.
So with SHINA, what makes us so successful there and growing is that we come in and our people on the ground are from the community. They speak the vernacular languages. They understand the culture. And it prevents so many missteps. The littlest things. You can have a group that comes in to do great work, and they put up a big cross to take a photo, and they may have just endangered somebody's life because the culture is so different from ours. So for us, we've got the guys on the ground and the women. We have Hanifer. And they know the culture. They do what they need to do. The other thing with SHINA, after we build something, we give it to the community. SHINA doesn't hold on and own any of the projects we've done in Tanzania. You know, if we...
It's gifted to the community.
It's gifted. If a church gave ground to build a preschool for the community, we give the preschool to the church. If the village gave the ground to build the preschool for the community, or I should say early learning center, because it will eventually be more than a preschool, then we give it back to them when we're done building it.
Looking at this scene here, this is much of what you see in many different areas as far as Tanzania is a lot of rural areas, and of course it's a rapidly urbanizing country at the same time. So what do you see for the future of young children like this in Tanzania that really is growing and taking its place in world society, and it's having an influence because it is an emerging market nation, and they want to do good because just in a year they built 2 airports. I mean, they're improving the roads. There's a lot of activity going on. If you go back, you know, year by year, you really see the progress that's going on in this really very large country.
So one of the things with Tanzania, like many African countries, is a lot of times the telephone lines only went to the post office if you had one in your town or village. And then, so when cell phones came in, the whole country grabbed onto them. Anybody who could afford a cell phone in Tanzania has a cell phone. And what that's doing, it's actually opening up the internet to these young people, even when they're in rural villages, although as you know, we don't always get data in the rural villages. So I think there's knowledge coming in that was never able to come in before. My hope, I think the biggest challenge for Tanzania and many African countries is moving from the what can I bring home for me and my family today to how can I support my community and my family today.
Now we got to be quick. You have about 20 seconds. We were there giving out the SkinTex MR3, the anti-mosquitoes. What do you see this, but also other kinds of new initiatives for SHINA Inc. that's really propelling it to be a major force in society of Tanzania? And you know, got about 15 seconds.
You know, malaria kills so many people. Everyone in Tanzania knows someone who has died from malaria.
Every family's been
Every family. So I think this is going to make SHINA a household name throughout Tanzania.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Rose, for being with us, and thank you to your viewers for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.